Hello and welcome to this week's Friday field trip. My name is Elliot Lawrence and I am the 4-H educator for Lucas County in Northwest Ohio. This week during our virtual field trip, we are going to be taking a tour of one of the most grand estates in the United States, a very famous home of Thomas Jefferson, otherwise known as Monticello. And so what you'll see here in this first shot is the Grand Hall of Monticello. And the unique thing about this room is it has a lot of different things in it. And we'll kind of talk about all of those things as we go through this room. But this is the Grand Hall. This is where you arrive first. It's kind of like the entryway of Monticello. And there are a lot of artifacts all over the walls and a lot of different artifacts throughout history. And it's kind of a neat room. This is kind of an homage to natural history and Western civilization. And this is where, if you were alive back when President Jefferson was living in this house, before he was president, you would have been greeted by him or his staff. There's also a lot of interesting up here. There's a lot of American Indian culture, Native American culture references up in the upper area of this room. The whole theme of this room kind of is knowledge is power. So that was something that Thomas Jefferson really believed, and so that's why there's a wide variety of things, and it's used to educate the people, his visitors that would come into his house. So we're going to look over here. The first thing we're going to check out is it's a replica of the Declaration of Independence. And Jefferson, of course, we knew was the primary author of the Declaration of Independence, and has inspired independence and civil rights movement throughout the world, throughout history, all of history. Although Jefferson was penned the words "all men are created equal," he was a lifelong slaveholder, and his actions often contradicted his words. A lot of historians believe that there's just kind of two sides of Thomas Jefferson. There's Thomas Jefferson, the politician, and Thomas Jefferson, the businessman. Thomas Jefferson, the businessman, often did have slaves because growing up in the South and having business in the South, it's something that that's what ran the economy in the South. And so he did. There were instances of him freeing those slaves after many years. So then there's also the politician of Jefferson, which is speaking on the words of all men are created equal. So there's kind of this. Thomas Jefferson kind of has a bit of a duality. So over here, you'll notice as we're spinning around, it's a Native American wall. And after doubling the size of the United States with the Louisiana Purchase, Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark west, where they encountered about 40 different American Indian nations. They exchanged diplomatic gifts with each other, and a lot of those gifts are in Monticello still to this day. There's a clock up on the ceiling up there, pretty high. Jefferson's weekly calendar clock is powered by gravity, something that there was no electricity, so it was powered by gravity. And you can see it works on a system of pulleys and rope and weights. And so the way that it works, it's actually really complex. The way that it works is depending on what time of day. Of course, the Earth's rotation, Earth's gravity is slightly different, so it changes as it goes up and down. As those pulleys go up and down, it changes, and it's quite amazing. If you look into that, how that clock is made, it's pretty amazing that it was made that way. Over in the corner, you'll see is Alexander Hamilton, and if you've seen the musical Hamilton, you'll know that Jefferson and Hamilton were not good friends, and so you would wonder why the home of Thomas Jefferson has a bust of Alexander Hamilton. Well, it's because although they weren't friends, he did greatly appreciate Hamilton's contribution to the United States, contribution to the Federalist Papers, contribution to, Alexander Hamilton was the first Secretary of Treasury. What we know today as the treasury system, the money, all of the money that we have, all the money that we have in flow, that really is contributed to Alexander Hamilton and the base that he created back way back in the 1700s and 1800s as well. So the next step, we're going to go into the family sitting room, and this is kind of cool. One of the neat things about this room is it's not huge. One thing you'll know about Monticello is it's interesting because the rooms are not huge. There are a lot of rooms, but they're not huge, massive rooms. They're fairly modest sized rooms, and it's an interesting. It's kind of you go through the house and you kind of feel like it's a cozy lived-in house. Like you could live in this house. It's kind of fancy, but you can kind of live in this house. One of the cool features of this is that if you're an architecture fan or a history fan, this has a really cool, really good example of a picture railing. And so the picture railing is up at the top, and you'll see all the pictures are hanging down from it. That's so that you don't ruin the walls with nail holes. So a lot of old houses had a picture railing right on the bottom edge of their crown molding, and there were hooks that you could move along the outside edge of your ceiling, and then you just hooked pictures either using wire, or they use string, using wire, yarn, or anything like that. And you just hang the pictures off of that picture rail instead of having to put nails in your walls. Over here, you'll see a picture of Martha Jefferson Randolph. Jefferson married Martha Wales Skelton in 1772. They had 6 children, which only 2 surviving to adulthood, which is fairly common back then. It was very, the survival rate of people was a lot lower. We can thank modern medicine for that, of course. This portrait by James Westfall Ford depicts their eldest daughter, Martha Jefferson Randolph, when she was just 10, and her mother died from complications due to childbirth right after Martha was born. So here's another, it's kind of like a commemorative picture of it's an engraving of the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson was only 33 years old when he was chosen for the Second Continental Congress to draft the Declaration of Independence, which was obviously adopted in July 4th, 1776. And Jefferson's words have been an inspiration for political movements all the way throughout history. One of our most important documents. 33 years old. Let me get back to that. It's amazing if you think about, once again, getting back to it. If we watch, Hamilton is probably one of the more popular shows, musicals shows, now that it's streaming, that people see that about the beginnings of our founding fathers. Our founding fathers were incredibly young when they were founding the country. It's something that you don't think about a lot of times. I would have been considered an old man back in the 1700s because the life expectancy was not that high. So I believe Alexander Hamilton actually, when at the period of time when he first started writing the Federalist Papers, he was I think like 20, 21, 22, somewhere around that, if I remember right. So they're very young. All of the founding fathers were very young when they did that. When they founded our country. So silhouette wall, this is something that a lot of people did back in the day. Jefferson's daughter became the plantation mistress of Monticello in 1809, and after her father retired from presidency. There are original silhouettes of some of her 12 children. Jefferson once wrote, "I live in the midst of my grandchildren." I had 12 grandkids. Jefferson's daughter, which would have been, I can't remember which daughter that was, but one of his daughters had 12 children, so he had a lot of grandkids, and those are some of the 12 there. Back over here behind us on this wall is the Edge Hill portrait. This one's painted by Gilbert Stuart. A painting of Jefferson can be seen on the $2 bill. It's the same exact painting that's on the $2 bill. Jefferson, depicted as our third president, called the presidency an office of splendid misery. Retiring from dreaded occupation of politics, he returned to Monticello in 1809. So he wasn't a huge fan of politics. And not a huge fan of being president, actually. I think his best years were after presidency and before presidency, during his presidency. You also have to remember the United States was so young that there were a lot of problems when he was president. So this is a work table, and most likely this work table is actually made by an enslaved carpenter, John Hemmings. Most likely made this. One of the many items of Monticello that were produced by slave labor. Martha Jefferson Randolph likely viewed the table as an important part of her domestic chores, such as sewing. So you can keep different things inside of there. Unfortunately, a lot of stuff in homes back then, especially if they're large plantation homes of wealthy people. A lot of the furniture, a lot of the furnishings, and everything was made mostly by slave labor. Now we're going to check. We're going to step into the library, which is once again, like I said, not a huge room. Lots of books, but not something massive. So the library. Jefferson does have a vast collection. He did have a vast collection of books. This library is considered one of the best in North America. Obviously not the largest, but one of the best collections of books. Nearly 7,000 books. Jefferson could read in about 7 different languages too. Which is very interesting. Jefferson was a huge proponent of public education, and he also founded the University of Virginia. And in one of his quotes, he says, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be." So he had a very good grasp of what education was and how education furthered the creation of the United States, a very young United States at the time as well. So in addition to some of the traditional bookcases, Jefferson used book boxes. These were easier to transport and could be stacked to create an appearance of one large bookcase. When Jefferson sold his library in 1815, it took 10 wagon loads to transport the books to Washington. So you can see, if you look really closely, that's not a bookshelf. Those are actually, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 book boxes stacked on top of, I think that bottom piece is a bookshelf, but this top piece is six book boxes, which is actually kind of an ingenious way of storing books. A lot of people don't do that these days. Because the other thing too is a lot of people don't move books a whole lot. A lot of people don't have books to begin with. So over here you'll see a floor plan or a blueprint of his estate, and he called it the Academical Village. He called himself the father of the University of Virginia. Jefferson believed an educated society was essential to the survival of democracy. And these engravings show Jefferson's design for the university, which he referred to as as a hobby at my old age, which is fascinating. That founding a university was his retirement gig per se. So back here, we kind of saw that when we first walked into the library. There was a greenhouse on the side, or there is a greenhouse on the side, part of Jefferson's suite of 4 rooms. The greenhouse was a laboratory for plants, flanked by Venetian porches. Jefferson kept a work table and tools here, as well as pet mockingbirds. Interesting enough, pet mockingbirds. Not a lot of people have pet mockingbirds. So there's also a lot of arches. You'll see a great example of that right there in the library. Jefferson, it took John Hemmings, once again, the man that created the piece of furniture, took him, he and one other enslaved person on the staff, James Dinsmore, would have to, actually James Dinsmore, James Dinsmore was a hired carpenter. He was actually a white man. To build this arch, it took them 12 days to build this, just to build this arch. When you think of woodworking back then with very primitive tools, it would be hard to do. Next, we're going to go up to the end of the cabinet, where we're going to go into the cabinet room. The cabinet room is used by Jefferson as an office, and this is kind of a neat. I think it's a neat looking office. I like the way that the room kind of has a. I like the angles of the room. So right there in front of us on his desk is a polygraph. The polygraph is a type of a copying machine. Jefferson wrote with one of 2 pens, and the other pen duplicated his writings on a second paper. Jefferson kept copies of nearly all of his 19,000 letters. So if you can imagine, you're writing on one, and at the same time, the way you move your pen, this machine, mechanical, it's not an electric machine, it's manual, but it's moving the other pen with it. It's a pretty neat system, and pretty efficient in copying whatever you're writing. So an orrery, this is an orrery. It's an operating model of the solar system, demonstrates daily and annual motion of the planets and their satellites. By the end of 1793, Jefferson had his orrery at Monticello, likely in his cabinet where it is today. Over here is the bust of John Adams, and John Adams, of course, worked very closely with Thomas Jefferson on the Declaration of Independence. The two then later became rivals and members of the opposite political parties. Later in life, they resumed their friendship and died on the exact same day, July 4th, oddly enough, July 4th, 1826. And the story goes that John Adams, I have to remember which one died first. I believe it was Adams died first, and Jefferson, his dying words were something about, "I'm waiting for John Adams to die." There was even, at that point in time, there was this friendship, but there was this friendly rival between the two of them. So, or I think he might have said something about John Adams finally won and died before me. I don't know. There's this really cool kind of morbid, fun fact about their death on the same day. Over here behind this desk is a case clock. It's an extremely precise case clock, is made for astronomical observation. It's driven by a single weight, which Jefferson used to indicate the day of the week, just as he did with the great clock in the hall. So next we're going to go into the chamber. And this is kind of a more of a living area than a work area. This is the chamber, of course, was an old term. It's also known as a bedroom these days, and displays some of the French ideas Jefferson implemented in his Virginia home. As a diplomat in France for 5 years, Jefferson admired many architectural features he saw in Europe. When he returned to Monticello in 1789, he remodeled the house Jefferson died in this very room on the afternoon of July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. I think he planned it that way, honestly. So there's an alcove bed, which I think is one of the coolest features of this room. It's in between his study and his chamber, and it's an effort to save space. The walls, so that was also flanked. You see the door over there. There's a closet over there, so it saved it, very efficient, and saved a lot of space in the room. Jefferson actually installed alcove beds throughout the entire house, and he rose each morning when it was light enough to see hands of his obelisk clock, which he designed at the foot of his bed. There's some Jefferson boots over in the corner. These are Jefferson's original horseback riding boots, still in Monticello today. Every morning, Jefferson rode on horseback for exercise and inspected his plantation. So up here is another really fascinating. A lot of houses are so tall, and there's so much wasted space in the houses. This is one of the ways that one of the ways that he maximized the amount of space in this house to get the most out of it. So this came from French architecture, and this door over here actually went up to, I'm not sure if I don't know if it was a ladder or a stairway. It probably was a ladder for more efficient space. And so it's a walk above closet. So there's all this room above everything because you don't want to have high ceilings in a house. His study didn't have too high of ceilings. This room has pretty high ceilings, but his study didn't have high ceilings because the way that you heat houses, all the heat would rise up to the top and you wouldn't get any heat at the bottom. So you wanted to have low ceilings. So what do you do with all that headspace? Well, you have a walk above closet. The door as I said, the door over here had a ladder. You go in that door, you climb up the ladder, and all of your clothes and anything that you would have in a closet would be up there. Also, holes to the outside, skylight at the top. Skylight would bring down light into the room. The holes in the wall going into the closet would also bring light in the closet because, of course, this was before electricity, so you would have to have light in that closet. Really cool feature, I think. So this is the fireplace in the chambers is very unique. Jefferson based the word at the top of the fireplace is a very fancy word that I'm probably going to butcher. So bear with me. It's an entablature. The entablature in this room on a design from the Temple of Fortuna Virilis in Rome. So the entablature of the fireplace repeats the form of the room's main entablature, except that an acorn was added. This addition is an outside the canon of classical form. So what does all that mean? Blah, 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 right? If you're an architecture student or you love architecture, you might know. So this room has a design. See that up at the top? We kind of refer to it more now as crown molding. That crown molding matches exactly the top of that fireplace. And so the room, Jefferson had a very, very keen eye on detail, and you can see it in a lot of his rooms in Monticello. The room completely, that fireplace completely mimics the architecture in that entire room. Very fascinating. If you're, like I said, if you're an architecture student, you love historical architecture, you probably love, hopefully you'll get to see Monticello at some point in time if you do love architecture, because it's one of the most unique homes in the United States. So once again, talking about the skylights again. So Monticello saw skylights in France while serving as a minister of France from 1784 to 1789, and brought back the architectural element back to Monticello. One of 13 skylights in this house, along with a large window, strategically placed mirror, and strategically placed mirror, flooded the room with light. So a lot of times we use mirrors now just to look at ourselves. There's the mirror. So light would come in from that floor to ceiling window, light would come in from the skylight, it would reflect off of that mirror, and it would really light the room. If you see this room right now, you're looking around and you think, now there's another mirror there. Another mirror with, it looks like the 360-degree camera that took these pictures. There's no lighting in this room. There's zero lighting in this room right now. So it is all 100% natural light, which is, it's fascinating. So next up, we're going to look at the parlor. The parlor is the social hub of Monticello. Of any house, the parlor is going to be the social hub. Family and friends would gather for music and games and conversation. It's also the location of many weddings and dances and other important events that would be held at the house. Jefferson also has his art collection in the parlor. Parlor is a little bit larger room because you're going to have more people in the parlor. But for a lot of houses, this parlor is not as big as some. So you can see a really good example, that picture rail again up there at the top. And you'll see a really good example of, he matched the crown molding again with the molding above the doors and above the windows and everything too. So this is a Salome. This is over here. And religious art was popular in Jefferson's lifetime. This is a painting of Salome holding the head of St. John the Baptist. Jefferson might have used art like this to talk about the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, which he drafted. There's a chess set over here as well. Anybody likes playing chess. Games were important, just as they are today. They pass time, or their games in the 17 and 1800s are a little bit different than what they are today. They include marbles and dominoes and card games. And then, of course, wealthy people that could afford a chess sets were a little bit more expensive. They would then have a chess set. A lot of parlors had chess sets in them. This is the Saturn. The Saturn looks like a piano. It's very similar to a piano. It has a much different sound than a piano. Many of Jefferson's family members played instruments. This Saturn, or English guitar, as it's often called as well, it rests on a harpsichord, and across the room is a pianoforte. Thomas Jefferson played the violin, but his original violins likely no longer survive. It'd be really cool to get if they still had some of. He is very famous for playing violin. That is supposedly, the story goes, he won over his wife by his violin playing skills. These three pictures at the top here are called Jefferson's Trinity. These portraits from left to right are Enlightenment thinkers, Sir Francis Bacon, Sir Isaac Newton, and John Locke. Jefferson greatly admired these men, calling them my trinity of the three greatest men the world has ever produced. A lot of people feel that Thomas Jefferson is also a very great man that the world produced. Once again, going back to architecture features, this is a very nice parquet floor, really good example of a parquet floor. Jefferson likely designed the unusual geometric parquet floor based on examples he saw in Paris as the minister of France, of course. This parquet floor is made of cherry and beech wood. The floor uses tooth and groove or tongue and groove construction, and it was assembled by the Irish joiner James Dinsmore, who also, you remember, made the arch back in his chamber, back in his cabinet, I believe, is where he made the arch. Next up, we're going to travel into the dining room. And this real cool color on the wall, right? This one's pretty neat. The door beside it there is a wine dumbwaiter. So on both sides of the fireplace are dumbwaiters that connect to the wine cellar beneath this room. The dumbwaiter uses a pulley system, so the slave servant in the wine cellar could send up a full bottle of wine up the dumbwaiter, and the empty bottles were sent back down to get rid of. It's pretty sweet. Dumbwaiters are pretty cool. I've seen some houses that have dumbwaiters built in. So there are double pocket doors, which is a very pretty amazing feat. Does not happen. These doors separate the dining room from the tea room. The tea room is the coldest room in the house. The double doors in the windows insulate from the cold, while a skylight and mirror placement make use of good natural light. A lot of pocket doors do not have glass in them either. It's very unique to find pocket doors with glass in them. So over here is some artwork. You can barely see it. It's called Iron versus Natural Bridge. Well, I'm sorry, there's two. There's the iron bridge and then there's a natural bridge, the two pictures beside each other. They depict the Coalbrookdale Bridge in England, which is the first major bridge in the world to be constructed wholly of cast iron, and then the natural bridge of Virginia. Jefferson hung them together to compare and contrast the natural world with the works of mankind, which is what, the whole idea of the United States was formed on, was this bringing together. So the chrome yellow paint that I discussed, the walls of this room were restored to chrome yellow in 2010 after extensive research by paint experts indicated Jefferson had the room painted this same yellow color in about 1815. A fashionable color of the time, chrome yellow cost 33 times more than the standard red, or sorry, if I could say it, white paint, the standard white paint. So really the chrome yellow, all it did was when people came into that room, you knew this guy's got some money because he is spending 33 times as much money on this paint than just white. So over here we have a dining box. James Hemming, an enslaved African-American chef, traveled to Paris with Jefferson when he was the minister of France. And Hemmings used French technique to cook indigenous American, African, and European foods. The results helped create a new American cuisine. There's a lot of stuff that we can thank Hemmings for that, and we can thank Thomas and Jefferson. Really, we got to thank Hemmings for that because he's the one that created a lot of it. Next, we're going to go outside into the tea room, and the tea room is just a small, intimate area. The tea room is used for tea after and before dinner, and it's much smaller area. It is bathed in light. It's completely covered in windows. Kind of a neat room. So over here, you see the Marquis de Lafayette bust. Marquis de Lafayette was a Frenchman and hero of the American Revolution. He spent a lot of time in the United States, even as a Frenchman, and was one of Jefferson's best friends. This bust, a copy of one sculpted by Jean-Antoine Houdon, was in Jefferson's gallery of worthies in the tea room. They were really good friends. Over here, you'll see some dumbwaiters. Using the dumbwaiter with shelves, guests could serve themselves and clean their own plates during meals. These dumbwaiters, along with the wine dumbwaiter and revolving service door, limited the number of slaves needed for a meal service. See a picture over here of Benjamin Smith Barton. He's a physiognotres. I don't even know what that is. Jefferson and Benjamin, a physician and a botanist, shared an interest in the aspects of natural history and Native American cultures. They were both members of the American Philosophical Society, and of course, that's an organization promoting useful knowledge in science and the humanities. Jefferson was actually the president of American Philosophical Society for 18 years. Lastly, in the tea room, we'll look at the triple sash window, floor to ceiling window. It created a lot of natural light, and raising the bottom of the two sashes formed a doorway, creating a private entrance to the terrace. Raising the bottom sash and lowering the top sashes created cross ventilation, which was important in days before air conditioning. So kind of a neat, it'd be kind of neat to have windows that would double as a door as well. We kind of do with sliding doors. A little bit different though. So now we're going to look at one of the most famous rooms that you can see from the outside, and this is called the Dome Room. You would think it would be a little bit more fancy, I guess. It's definitely not. This dome is visible on the back of a U.S. nickel. Two flights of very steep and narrow stairs lead to the rooms on Monticello's third floor. The use of the dome room is not known really with certainty. At times, it served as a bedroom for a married grandson, as a storeroom, and probably as a playroom for the grandchildren. So it's kind of like that extra space, like the people, some people might have like a home theater space, and this is kind of like that. Obviously, there was no theater in there, but it was kind of like a playroom. So behind these doors right here, the two of Jefferson's granddaughters nicknamed the Cuddy. These two young women, desperate for privacy in an overcrowded house with nearly 30 people, set it up as a sitting room, sarcastically calling it their fairy place. So it's just a small room off the side there. The oculus, or the skylight, up at the top, the top, was designed as a single large circle of glass. Jefferson's glass arrived broken, so he settled for a different design. In 1989, museum staff installed the current oculus, finally completing Jefferson's plan for Monticello's dome. So this is actually different than what it would have been. This is more of the full glass than what it was. Mirrored windows, so these windows over here are actually mirrored windows. Jefferson designed each of the octagonal walls with a window inside. However, 3 of them butted up to the house, so he mirrored them and raised them to look present the illusion of an unbroken view. So if you look, it looks like you're looking outside the entire time, but these are actually mirrors. And you don't want to have some of the windows, that aren't there, not having a window at all. While the room appears to be very symmetrical, there are actually some uneven walls. It's not a perfect octagon. The walls are slightly irregular due to the size to support the dome. This is visually concealed in part by a large molding around the floor. So next we're going to go outside a little bit and check out the residence. It's a really, really beautiful plantation. It looks really nice. So this is called Mulberry Row, is where we're standing right now. And over here you'll see the textile shop. And so in this building, enslaved women and girls wove a coarse fabric to clothe Monticello's slaves. Harriet Hemings, daughter of Thomas Jefferson, and an enslaved woman named Sally Hemings, worked here for about 7 years before leaving Monticello at age 21. It has a pretty good view too. You can't see really good. His property has a really nice view. We're kind of in that tree grove right there. Really cool property. Here is, they also had a very large vegetable garden. Most large plantations did have vegetable gardens. So perched atop a halfway point of the garden is the garden pavilion, and it's a Chinese railing and paragonal roof. Jefferson used the pavilion as a quiet retreat for reading in the evening. Kind of a neat little place to go. So there are actually some plants. Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark to explore the newly acquired Louisiana territory, as I said before. They sent back botanical plants and seeds, and some of the plants grown in the vegetable garden today were sent to Monticello by tribal elders of from the 3 affiliated tribes. Pretty neat. So that is about the end of Monticello, and I hope you had a nice time. As I said, it's one of the most beautiful homes and one of the most beautiful plantations in the United States, and hopefully get a chance to see it at some point in time. I do have a very short evaluation that I'd love for you to fill out. I'm going to go ahead and put it in the chat box. And it takes a very short amount of time. It's only about 4 or 5 questions. Here are some, if you'd like to view some of the other resources, I'll also put that in the chat box as well.